Like I said, more food for thought. We're going to leave you with more questions than answers. In this final half hour, Andrew and I are going to try and sum things up, and we thought rather than literally finishing each other's sentences, though we're quite capable of doing that, that we would each take a few minutes to talk to you about what we see coming. No, I'm not going to use a clicker. I'm terrible at that. And I'm going to start out, and then I'm going to clear the decks and let Andrew finish up, and maybe we'll have a little time for Q&A. So you've heard the term Government 2.0. I think we prefer we government. And I want to start by suggesting that there's something wrong with this picture. I don't know if you recognize it. That's one of Barack Obama's campaign rallies. And I deliberately chose this because I think last year when we had PdF, we sort of surfed off the Obama wave. I think there was a lot of interest in everything that Obama did or was supposed to have done using the web. I actually think the myth of what happened is stronger than the reality. I'm not going to get into that here. But this is a very classic picture of politics. It's one speaking to many. And I think we want to argue that, in fact, that's the wrong picture, and that what you see, the P, right, the politician at the top, talking down to many people, that is the classic approach to politics. And that we've begun to have people speaking back up to politicians when we vote, maybe we respond to a poll, or we send them an email, and that neither of those flows are really where the future is. The future is in how citizens, those little circles at the bottom, how they are starting to connect to each other. I like that Haakon said the future is, we have a 500-year future. Where is he? Over there. Because I think we're really at the very beginning of figuring out how to build and mobilize that power of citizens networking and connecting to each other. The fact is, the internet doesn't empower anybody. We empower ourselves. It's just a tool. And the fact of the matter is that this many-to-many conversation, this networking, it's hard to figure out how to make it work well. I think we've heard over the last 2 days from people who are doing it and people who are also pointing out the problems. Like Lena was saying just earlier, it doesn't yet include everyone. It may never include everyone. We don't know. So we want to propose that there is something new coming. And we can we can identify at least the green shoots that are beginning to come up. And our working definition of we government is this idea of government and citizens co-creating new forms of collaboration and service that use technology, that use public data, and that also use citizen-generated data, as well as the social web, all of us being connected to address vital issues and solve public problems. Let me give you some very quick thoughts that go with that. Arguably, this is not a ideological right-left kind of thing. It's not about whether government is bigger or whether it's smaller. It's whether it's effective. And I think more of us are seeing in the we government wave this idea of just let's do it ourselves. It's also, as people have been saying, an opportunity to do more with less at a time when budgets are stressed, that the technology may in fact be a multiplier, and that we can tap a civic surplus that's out there. Clay Shirky had this idea of the cognitive surplus. Instead of wasting time watching TV, you can add a little bit of information. You can donate information back. As Andy Carvin said, you don't have to just donate blood, you can donate information. So I think the site is Fix My Street, which comes, of course, out of my society in England. We're very big fans of theirs. And this has been around for a while. They've had more than 100,000 updates. People reporting problems in their neighborhood and getting that information shared and up to the responsible people in their towns. The nice thing about Fix My Street, it's open source, so there's Fix My Street Canada. It's literally the same code, and as you can see, it's just beginning to take off there. There's See-Click Fix, which started in one city in Connecticut, in New Haven, and is now also beginning to spread across the world as a platform that cities and their residents can use together to identify problems, to make sure the information is brought to the attention of the people who are affected by it, whether it's the responsible officials or the people in the neighborhood themselves who can get together and solve a problem together. There's Neat Streets in Australia and New Zealand. I had fun looking for these. There's Outra Baix, which I'm told means another bump in Spanish. This is a pothole reporting site. There's Buitenbeter, which Jen Stensma was here to talk about yesterday. This is their iPhone app. I'm sorry, it's not in good focus, but moving the ability to share and donate and collect information together to the mobile platform. There's Kirti, which is in India. This is a great one. It's Buggered Mate. That's from Australia. And again, it's another one of these citizen reporting platforms, a great example of we government beginning to form. Give a praj, which I think means give a hint, make a suggestion. This is in Copenhagen. We're beginning to see also these different efforts which are rooted in local places. The community of developers who are engaged in this work, and some of these people are in government, in forward-thinking city governments, and others are the sort of grassroots hackers and activists, are working to share information, share code, and get the data standardized. This is a critical point. Let's not create a system where one city has its rail lines 3 feet apart and another city has their rail lines 2.5 feet apart. And we need the same approach to how public data is made available online, and that's the idea behind Civic Commons. Which I like, by the way, that they say here on their homepage, let's save the public millions of dollars. You see that emphasis on practical results. That's another important thing about we government. In the U.S., we have something called 311, which are services for calling for information in your city. There's a movement now called the Open 311 movement. I strongly suggest if anybody wants to plug in, this is one of the hubs, is the Open 311 Wiki, which is just this wonderful repository. I just gave you the beginning of the page. It's a wonderful repository of all these sites, all these tools, the people who are developing them, the data standards, etc. One nice example that we're tracking closely is a small city in Texas called Manor, Texas, which was featured on the White House's Open Government Initiative blog. This is a place where they're trying to use everything that's out there, from QR codes to Spigot, which is a platform for idea generation and filtering. And so this is Manor is the town. Manor has its own development labs. You know, Google has labs. Manor now has its own labs where citizens are sharing ideas on everything from how to improve the maps of their town to how to get a better grocery store to come situate themselves there. This is We Government in action. We covered it on Tech President, and I just want to make a point that we are going, at Personal Democracy Forum, we're going to expand our coverage of We Government. We think this is really a very interesting phenomenon that's spreading around the world. Please send us your tips and your suggestions. I think one of the things that we try to do very hard with PdF, is just to be a hub for highlighting all this information and a place where all the people who are in this community can connect up and hear about both the challenges and the opportunities and the innovations. And I know we can always do a better job than we're doing. So please help us. What's next? I'm going to just leave you with one more slide and one or two promotional things, and then I'm going to ask Andrew to come add his thoughts to this. So a lot of these We Government sites are about services. They're not yet, we haven't quite yet figured out how we do democracy well. And one very interesting platform for doing local democracy, which I think we should follow closely, is a site called Localocracy. And the reason why it's so interesting is that it's rooted in one town in Massachusetts. They're not trying to be everywhere all at once. It's starting in one place as like a test bed. And anyone can read the site, but to participate, you have to use your real name and you have to be really a registered voter there. And so they're people, real people who know each other, are having a transparent and interactive an ongoing discussion about the issues in their town. And there's some very sophisticated thinking behind this. It was started by some young people who went to college in that town. And I think we're going to see more interesting collaboration tools like this begin to grow up from below, rather than well-intentioned e-government projects that get lots of financing from above and that nobody really uses because they're not really connected to people. So what's next beyond that for us? If you are not busy, 6 weeks from now, we would certainly love to see you in Santiago in Chile, where we're going to launch PdF Latin America with some partners there. You may have met Felipe Heuser and Diego Bias, who are the core of our team. And lastly, we want to make sure that you save the date, and we invite all of you to come join us for PdF 2011 in New York City. The plan is to have it at New York University. We're moving to a new place, which we think will be really beautiful. Maybe not as beautiful as this, but it's Manhattan, so it's got its own special charm. It's been great being able to hang out and meet so many of you, and I want to invite Andrew up now to add his thoughts to this picture of We Government. I'm going to take a seat, and Andrew will take us out.
Actually, the curation of this conference, was just quickly note, it's a team effort, but the curation is really the brain trust of John Worth, who's right here, and Micah Sifry. So the content and the ideas and the speakers are a reflection of our editorial perspective led by them, so they deserve a lot of credit for putting this together. Thank you. I know I'm separating you from some ice-cold kava in the courtyard, but just a few more final thoughts, and then we'll ask you for a few comments from you. One of the reasons why Micah and I are so excited about the We Government idea is that I don't know how many of you knew this. Those of you who know us from the States know this, but 5 years ago, I ran for public advocate in New York. Micah was my co-conspirator in that campaign. For those who don't know what that office is, it's the second in line to the mayor. It's sort of like a council member without a portfolio specific district who's responsible for the entire city. If the mayor is unable to finish his term, the public advocate becomes mayor. And it was a very misunderstood office. It had a very small budget, and it presided over the city council, could introduce legislation, but had a very difficult time getting anything done. And many people in New York thought it should be abolished because it was viewed by politicians as a stepping stone to running for mayor, and it didn't really serve any purpose. Well, 5 years ago, when we decided to try running for office, which was an effort really for us to be able to try out some of these tools, and at the time we had blogs. We didn't have Facebook, we didn't have Twitter, we didn't have YouTube, to see whether or not collective action could be turned into physical action, people voting. I proposed that the Office of the Public Advocate be reinvented, that it shouldn't be just one person as the head of an office, but it should really be a network, because New York City, 8 million people, there were already tens of thousands of public advocates. We just didn't think of them as quote-unquote public advocates, but they would volunteer in parks, they would mentor in schools, they would join community boards, and in their small ways, they would be public advocates. And one theory that we've always maintained is that organized minorities are always more powerful than disorganized majorities. So if the public advocates around more healthcare, more money being spent on asthma research or healthcare for children with asthma, were able to get connected to each other, then maybe they could show up at a city council hearing and lobby for more money for asthma. So if we could connect the asthma advocates in the Bronx with the asthma advocates in Queens or in Staten Island, then maybe we could create some change. It was a very noble idea. Well, let me tell you, I got 4% of the vote. When I went to the New York Times editorial board to offer my candidacy for them to consider to endorse, we got about 45 minutes of time. And one of our principal ideas was that New York should become wireless, that Wi-Fi should be made available everywhere as much as possible so that as many of these connections could happen. I had to spend about half an hour of my 45 minutes in the New York Times editorial board explaining to them what Wi-Fi was. That was 5 years ago. Just to give you a sense of how far we have come. I also tell this story when I ran into Mike Bloomberg, who many people think is a technologist. He asked me whether or not we would have to dig up the streets. So when we listen to for Wi-Fi, right? So when we listen to all these wonderful ideas, and what makes us excited about PdF and about this community is that the dreams of that campaign are all being reflected by the work that you do. And that we don't view this so much as an issue of technological change as possibly anthropological change. So I have a question to ask you. Micah and I are arguing this question. And I may not have my history exactly right, but we heard about Gutenberg a couple of times during this conference. And I always like to say, maybe it's a little fictionalized, but that the Gutenberg Bible was the first book that was published en masse because at the time of the invention of the movable type, many people argued that the printing press would spread as many lies as it would truths. And the Gutenberg Bible was beyond reproach by many people, although some people believe now that if you want to create an atheist, give them a Bible. Well, it democratized information. It made information portable. It had huge impact, as was just discussed. So I have a question for you, which is, are we waiting for, if you allow my analogy, a Gutenberg Bible moment for the internet? Is it possible that our society, that the conversion from the industrial age to the information age that we're all investigating has not yet proven a moment in time where the internet is beyond reproach? That journalists, that governments, that citizens everywhere will view it as a benevolent tool? Do we need some example? Do we know of any? So just to wrap up, does anyone want to answer me on that question? Can you name an example that goes beyond reproach that shows the power of this technology for society, for democracy, for humankind? Any ideas? The question is there an example in the use of new information technologies today that will prove that the internet and the growth of connectivity among human beings is a force for good beyond belief? I'm sorry. I'm sorry?
And train timetables online.
That.
Did you hear Charlie? That putting bus and train timetables online.
Buses and train tables on time. I think someone over here mentioned Wikipedia, which was Micah's example. By the way, buses and train times, just to give you a sense of why I think this is an anthropological problem, not just a technological problem. In New York, when people when they go through the tunnels and the bridges, there's something called Easy Pass, which is something that many people in all modern cities now have electronic toll taking. But half the people who go through the bridges and tunnels in New York don't have Easy Pass. And they've discovered that the reason why is because people feel that they're going to be tracked by the government. So they stand in line, they sit in line waiting to pay cash at the toll stations, backing up traffic for miles and causing huge traffic jams. But they're on their cell phones in their cars, and they're also having pictures of their license plates taken as they go through the tolls. So we still have a lot of learning to do about the implication of these technologies, and when we approach these problems, we bring with it our own experience, and we don't even understand the implications on our own lives. It's not really fair for us to simply criticize government for not understanding its implications on government. But I want to keep the thread going. I can give one example myself, but please. Free software. So, so is that open software, open data, open platforms? And do you think that the people at Microsoft would agree with you on that? So, yes? Could you repeat that again, please? With the microphone.
I think there is no one or two or 10 or 100 examples, because that's the difference between Gutenberg and us now, that it's all spreaded in smaller than one.
So, thank you, because that's actually the point I'm trying to make. I think it's really early. 10 years after the invention of the Gutenberg Bible, the printing press and the publication of the Gutenberg Bible, it wasn't understood what the implications of that technology were going to be. And I think it's really early for us to be making judgments, hard judgments about what the implications of this technology are going to be. Whether or not we can maintain privacy, whether or not we can maintain more accountability, whether we can maintain different kinds of relations with each other when you have 8 billion people connected to each other. By devices, I mentioned this to Ben Rooney earlier, that the devices that people are going to have in their pockets when 90% or 95% of all human beings are connected to each other, which is going to happen in the next 5 or 10 years, the devices they're going to have in their pockets are going to make the iPhones and the BlackBerries that we carry today look like briefcase phones from 5 years ago or 10 years ago that Motorola used to make. So let me just close by telling you why we're happy you're here. We view ourselves as community organizers. We invite you to participate in a discussion about what all of this means, and we don't pretend to know. We'll try to highlight the things that we think are interesting. We'll ask some tough questions. We'll make some mistakes, make some pronouncements that may not be true or maybe a little bit too effusive. But we'll be curious, and we'll do whatever we can to listen to you and to the community, and to try to connect the different communities around the world, which is why we're going to, with the help of Telefonica, going to PdF Latam. Because there's a similar conversation is happening there that we're experiencing here, that we're experiencing in New York, and we're trying to connect all those conversations because we think there's a lot to be learned, and that there's a lot to be discovered, and there's still a lot to be built and to be collaborated on. Thank you very much for trusting us and for putting up with some of the technical difficulties that we've had. I've also trust that the main reason you'll come back is not because of the content that we present on stage or because of Micah or myself, but because of the relationships that you may have forged in meeting people here today. So before I thank my staff, I'd like to thank you, and please give yourselves a round of applause.